Welcome to our Bible study this morning. This morning we're continuing our series in Halloween by looking at the death symbols of Halloween. Let me give you a list of what we'll be looking at this morning in our lesson. We'll be looking at skeletons, ghosts, jack-o'-lanterns, Frankenstein, vampires, and bats. All of those have something in common, and as we get into the lesson this morning, you'll see what that is. We're looking at the death symbols of Halloween. If you remember from our previous lesson, the text we're going to be using throughout this series is found in 1 Thessalonians 5:21 and 22. Let me read to you 1 Thessalonians 5:21 and 22. Prove all things. Hold fast that which is good. Abstain from all appearance of evil. Keep in mind, once again, the Lord has given to Christians these instructions found in 1 Thessalonians 5. The idea is this. When we see things take place around us in this world, as Christians, we're responsible to prove them, meaning put them to the test. We're to ask the question, is this pleasing to the Lord or not? He goes on in these verses to say, look, when we find things that are pleasing to Him, we should hold fast to them. Hold them very tightly. Don't let them go. He says, hold fast that which is good. But likewise, he goes on to say, when we find something evil in the world that the Lord is displeased with, we are to abstain from all appearance of evil. So he says, even if it simply looks evil, a Christian should have nothing to do with it. Now that's the verses that we're going to use as a text for our Halloween studies. This morning we're looking at the death symbols involved with Halloween. Let's look at some of the history of the symbols that are used in Halloween. First of all, I would like us to look at skeletons and ghosts. Now you have to keep in mind, based on our previous study, and let me say this very quickly, it's really important that you hear all 5 of the parts of this study together. To just cherry pick 1 or 2 parts, it's very difficult to get the whole concept. If you remember from the last lesson, that would be lesson number 1, concerning the Halloween celebration itself, we saw that a big part of the Halloween celebration was to honor and to appease the dead spirits that were walking on the earth, based on Celtic pagan tradition. Now, keeping that in mind, why would skeletons and ghosts be a part of the Halloween celebration? Well, remember, they believe that the dead spirits of men walk the earth. What's both skeletons and ghosts pictures of? Death. Skeleton is a picture of a dead body, a body that no longer has life in it. A ghost is what? The spirit of a person after death walking upon the earth. So in both the skeleton and the ghost, it only makes sense they'd be a part of Halloween when you understand the background of Halloween. Both a skeleton and a ghost are a picture of death. A skeleton's a picture of the death of the human body. The spirit is the picture of a spirit that's been separated from a human body at death that is now walking the earth. What about a jack-o'-lantern? Okay, this is kind of a long story, and again, you can read more about it on my blog, as well as getting references to where you can find this on the internet. The story behind a jack-o'-lantern is this. Let me give it to you very quickly. You have Jack. He's a lazy, drunken farmer. To make a real long story short, he ends up trapping Satan using a cross. For Satan to gain his release, he makes a deal with Jack that he will never take Jack's spirit at death. So Satan says, look, Jack, when you die, I'm not going to take your spirit and cast you into hell if you let me go, now that you have me trapped. Okay. The problem is this. Jack is a horrible guy. He's a worthless, lazy drunk that doesn't please the Lord with his life, and he's not saved, so Jack dies. Well, he's not going to go to heaven because he's a sinner. He has never been saved. But he's not going to go to hell either because he made this agreement with Satan to never take his spirit. So guess what happens to old Jack? After Jack dies, his spirit's walking the earth because it has no other place to go. Remember what Halloween was about? Dead spirits walking the earth that people want to appease. Okay, so anyhow, you have Jack. He's this guy now. He's this spirit walking the earth after his death. He has no place to go. Can't go to hell, can't go to heaven. So what's he do? He hollows out a turnip, and he puts a burning coal in this turnip so that he can see where he's going as he walks on the earth. Well, over the years, the turnip was changed into a pumpkin. That's why you call the pumpkin that has a carving in it with a light in it, you call that what? A jack-o'-lantern, a lantern of jacks. It's supposedly what Jack, as a spirit, used as he walked on the earth to light his way so he could see where he's going. Again, you have death and walking on the earth involved with that story, and it became a part of Halloween because of the celebration of Halloween. What about Frankenstein? Okay, we all know that was based on a book by Mary Shelley. The book's name was The Modern Prometheus, and then later they changed it to Frankenstein. You have this doctor. His name was Victor Frankenstein. He tried to assemble a human body out of a variety of different dead corpses. He would cut different parts off of different dead corpses and put them together into a body. Then he tried to bring that body back to life. Okay, he did. So basically, what do you have in Frankenstein? A dead body walking on the earth now. He'd been given life again. But remember, he started out as multiple pieces of corpses. So again, you have death walking on the earth. It goes farther than that. Over time, the monster demands a mate from this doctor. And so this Dr. Frankenstein attempts to create a mate for the monster. The doctor fails. He's not able to create the mate. And so the monster turns against the doctor. And if you remember in the book, the doctor ends up having to kill his own creation, his monster, because the monster got totally out of control. What do you have? You have here the dead walking on the earth, harmful to man, so man has to do something to stop the harm from coming. That's exactly the idea of Halloween. But one more thing that I didn't realize until I studied this out, and again, you can look at this on the internet. There's places I give references where you can find this. Do you know where Mary Shelley got the idea of this book? According to these different internet sites, and again, I'm just getting this from the internet, she had a dream. Let me go back here just a minute. She wrote this book, I think it was in 1818 she wrote the book. 3 years before that, in 1815, she had a dream. In this dream, she saw her dead daughter suspended over a fire. The fire warmed her daughter's body and brought her daughter back to life. There's at least a claim out there floating around that that's where this Mary Shelley got the whole idea to start this book called Frankenstein. Again, what do you have? You have a dead person being given life so they're able to walk on the earth. Do you see how these are all related to death and the idea of being able to still exist on the earth? Bats and vampires. Okay, we all know vampires are called the living dead. Right there you have the idea of death walking on the earth. They come out at night to feed blood to their victims. How did vampires and bats ever get acquainted or get, associated together? In South America, there is such a thing called a vampire bat. They come out at night and they feed on the blood of animals. Many people believe that originally the way you got bats and vampires associated together was the habits of this blood-drinking bat compared to the story, the legend of Dracula. That's what brought them together because they both were very similar. But it goes farther than that. Remember I had said during the Samhain celebration, they would light bonfires. I'm sorry, the Samhain Eve celebrations, the Halloween celebrations. They would light bonfires to sacrifice animals to these spirits. Okay, back in those days, the claim is when they lit these bonfires, the fires would attract insects. We know that happens. Turn on a light bulb in your house today when it's blackout and you see insects flying against the windows and all sorts of things because they're attracted to light. So these bonfires that were lit attracted insects. Well, what do you get when you get a bunch of insects? You get a bunch of bats too because they feed on insects. So back then they would light these bonfires. It would attract the insects. The bats then would come to feed on the insects. So what you had was, as they lit these bonfires, you'd have a bunch of bats flying up there over top of the bonfires. Now remember, their mindset back then is, we're here sacrificing to the dead spirits. So in their minds, they began to believe that the bats they saw flying were the dead spirits. They said, see, we're making these sacrifices, these animal sacrifices. The smoke is ascending up, and look, the bats are coming because they're the dead spirits of men now that are coming to receive our sacrifices. So that's clearly one of the ways that bats were associated with Halloween. Again, though, it's the idea of death. In every case, with each one of these, you have the idea of death, being able to exist on the earth as compared to going to an eternal dwelling place. Skeletons and ghosts, jack-o'-lanterns, Frankenstein, and vampires and bats. All of them have that thing in common. You're talking about death, being on the earth. Folks, what does the Bible say? When a person dies, does their spirit stay on the earth? Absolutely not. I give you the reference to these in the blog. Let me give you a couple of verses real quickly. We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord. There Paul says, look, we're confident that when we become absent from the body, we're going to be present with the Lord. There's no intermediate area where we're going to go to first. Listen to Ecclesiastes. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. It doesn't say our body's going to return to the dust and our spirit's going to walk on the earth. It says it's going to return unto God. Here's Paul again. For I am in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. He says, look, I've got one of two choices. I can either continue to live on the earth with my physical life in my body, or at my death, I'm going to depart and be with Christ. I have one of two choices. I don't have a third option in this. Remember the thief on the cross? When he talked to Christ about his salvation, Christ made the statement, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. He doesn't say, today you're going to roam the earth after your spirit leaves your body. He said, the very same day you die, you're going to be with me in paradise, which would be the same day that Christ died. So in that one statement, Christ is saying when he died, he was going directly to paradise. And when the thief on the cross died, he was going directly to paradise. Again, the references to all those are found in my blog. Folks, let me tell you something. The Bible makes it plain. There is no intermediate state for spirits, meaning that they can walk on the earth instead of going into the hands of God. In every case, both lost and saved, when they die, they go into God's hands for God to deal with in whatever way he sees fit. If a person is saved, it's one of the greatest things to look forward to is physical death, because we know we're going to go to be with the Lord. But for a person who's never been saved, death is one of the most horrible things. Because they too, if they understand what the Bible teaches, they understand they're going to go into the hands of God. And in that sense be judged then for what they've done in their life. Listen, you wonder why this false teaching about spirits being able to walk on the earth, meaning the spirits of dead people able to walk on the earth, you wonder why that's so prominent? Think of how Satan can use that. It's like saying you can escape judgment. You can escape facing God. You can just walk the earth instead of going into God's hands. So it minimizes the need for a person to be saved. We'll get into our study into the next section next time. Thank you very much.